Environmental economics. So there is an article by Fullerton and Stavins, 1998. They are talking about how economists they see environment. So this is a little introduction towards environmental economics course. And in this, they talked about several myths. So which and they actually try to debunk several myths about how economists they think about environment. So in this recording, I'll just talk about the one myth, and the other ones I'll be talking about in the other recording. So there is one myth. Myth one is myth of universal market. This is one of the myths. So, I mean, it is believed that economists believe that market is going to solve all problems. This is what it is. That most of the people believe that economists only believe that market is going to solve all problems. And they actually said, no, it is not necessary that all economists believe that markets will be selling or markets will be solving all problems. So first welfare theorem says what? It says this, that private markets are perfectly efficient on their own, right? You have to just leave them. There it is. And market is going to solve the problems on their own if there are no interferences and no distortions. That's what it is. In very simple terms, in their words, and provided certain conditions are met. So they said this, that if you look at first welfare theorem, it says that private markets are perfectly efficient on their own. With no interference from government. With no interference from government, provided certain conditions are fulfilled. What are those conditions? What are those conditions? There are no public goods. There are no externalities. Then first welfare theorem is going to hold. No monopoly buyers or sellers. So there is no monopoly, there is no monopsony. No increasing returns to scale. Then first welfare theorem is going to hold. So these are the conditions. There are no information problems, no transaction costs, no taxes. There is no common property also. So no common property. So it's not that there is a common property. People can, for example, in environmental economics, we'll be talking about the common property resources where there is a common property where everyone can use that. But first welfare theorem says no. No other distortions between the costs which are paid by the buyers and the benefits which are received. Nothing of the sort. Just think about all of these conditions are very restrictive. So the way the market is going to work in the academic setting and the real markets is going to be very, very different. So all of these conditions, given at least in the environmental economics, they are not going to hold. So, for example, there is a negative externality. There is a negative externality in the sense that there is a pollution which your production is doing, right? So will you take social cost into consideration? or will you take only your cost into consideration? That's the thing. So there is an externality, and how can markets solve this problem? But the point is that, do you think that economists have left this problem? They haven't thought about it. Even though markets are there, even though markets are important, but haven't economists thought about externality problems also? They have, right? So it is not that they're thinking only market can solve all the problems, no. So let me write few points. So market by itself can't solve all problems. So if you leave everything to market, it cannot solve problem. For example, in case of negative externality, can market solve this problem by itself? You just leave it to the market. Producers will think, why should I worry about the others? Whatever pollution is happening, let it be, let it happen. But you tell me, haven't economists actually thought about this? That yes, they have. And they try to give some solutions also. So it's not that there is, they haven't thought about these problems, right? They have. Then they say, they give an example in which they said that natural resource economists will be very much interested in common property resources or open access. So there is a pool, there is a fish, there are fish there, and all fishermen go to that pool or go to that part of the river, and they get fish from there. But if I'm one of the fishermen and I am only thinking about myself and I take all the fish somehow, and I am not thinking about how is that going to affect you, so don't you think that economists haven't thought about these problems? They have. They have tried to give even solutions to these problems. So market cannot give an answer to the common property resources or open access resources. Right? They have. So, I mean, most of the people, in case if everything is left to the market, they're only going to think about themselves. They are going to think about only the direct cost which they are going to make. They are not going to think about the indirect cost, or they are not going to think about the cost which they are imposing on the others by their own actions. They're not going to think about that the fish is going to be scarce, then you're going to deplete this resource very soon if you're going to extract a lot of fish out of the pool very soon, right? Or for example, other non-renewable resource also. So they haven't thought about. So don't you think that economists haven't thought about these problems? So are they only thinking about that, yes, only markets can give solutions? No. Governments can come. So it's not that there is no interference from the government. So governments can definitely come to correct these market failures. Can try to correct these market failures, right? So they can restrict the pollutant emissions. They can say you can only pollute this much. If you go beyond it, maybe you have to pay a tax, or there is a fine, or there is whatever, prison or whatever, I don't know what. Or they can limit the access to the open access resources. You can only use it for this time. You can only get this much of resource, one particular person. So they can do things, right? So from where do you think the solutions are also coming? So it's not that the economists are only thinking about just market going to solve the problem. No, they are thinking also about the government interference. They are also thinking about the problems where the market cannot solve the problems, right? So it is not that all economists are going to believe that market is going to solve all the problems. They identify the market problems. So, but the usual tendency is when they first identify the problem, they try to find out, can market solve the problem? Because that's the most cost-effective way, without an interference from any other agency. So their first impulse is to think about whether market can actually solve this problem or not, right? But in case of environmental protection, I mean, market-based solutions may not be a solution actually, right? So they try to find out some other solution. So it's not that the economists are only thinking on these lines, right? That market is going to solve all the problems. So I'll be talking about the different myths which Fullerton and Stavins have talked about in their article in other recording, right? So that's an introduction to the environmental economics class. Okay, thank you, Beta.